G'day guys, welcome to Pumped On Properties monthly market update for May. Now unfortunately I don't have my brother Simon to do this one with me today. He's left me for the Goldie this weekend and he's down there enjoying some waves watching the Burleigh Pro. Now in terms of the Australian market for May, I'm just too excited today. I know towards the end of these videos I'd normally share the gold nugget and the positive news for the month or the year ahead, but it is looking so good out there right now. I've got to share these with you up front. Now the first and most important piece of news this month for investors was actually through a client of ours and a friend of mine, Ray. Now, Ray used to work in corporate banking for CBA, and he obviously has a whole lot of friends in that industry still. Now, Ray sent me an email a couple of days ago that he received from NAB Bank, where they're effectively saying that we could see as much as a 0.5% rate cut later this month in May. Now, on top of that, both CBA and NAB expect another rate cut of at least 0.5% later this year, which could result in the cash rate with the RBA sitting at 3.1% later this year, which means retail rates for average investors would be about 5.5%, and for investors with larger portfolios, under 5%. Now for me personally as an investor who's paid literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of extra interest in the last few years, I'm so excited to see them back in the fives. Now not only is that going to save you guys and me some money week to week, but it is going to add massive amounts of confidence to the market and serviceability, which we all know results down the line in more people coming into the market. Now, in terms of the most positive piece of news that I've heard in the last month, it's got to do with the incredible first home buyers grants and first home buyers thresholds that are washing out Australia-wide later this year. Now, according to my friend Clay over there at Aussie Home Loan, the current threshold in New South Wales for property in Sydney is about $900K for first home buyers, but later this year, they could move it all the way up to 1.5 mil. Now, in terms of the Melbourne market, it currently sits at $800K for first home buyers, which obviously prices people out of a lot of the suburbs that they'd want to live in, but later this year, it could go up to as high as $950K. And then the big news for Queensland, where the first home buyers grant threshold currently sits at $700K, that's moving later this year all the way up to $1 million. Now, from my personal analysis of history, as well as looking into CoreLogic's data, effectively when a wave of first home buyers can come into the market, along with improving and positive sentiment, more borrowing capacity and reducing interest rates, these are all beautiful things that put some fuel on the fire for later this year or early next year for investors and homeowners in Australia. Now, the first thing that I wanted to look at today as part of our monthly market update is the monthly capital growth rates across Australia's capital cities. Now, the good news for the first time in a while is all of the capital cities Australia-wide have actually gone up in the last month, and that's a result of a positive expectation for the future in terms of the rate cuts, the stability of the Australian government, and all of the other things I mentioned at the start of the vid. Now, in terms of the four top performing markets, we've got Brisbane and Perth continuing to kick ass, and according to SQM research, they will be the two top performing markets in Australia this year. On top of this, Hobart's had a cracker of a month, which is a little bit interesting because it's already had a cracker of the last 10 years, but like we started to talk about a few months ago, that sleepy city up there in the north of Darwin is starting to come into its own, and like we said, it's coming off the base of probably the lowest average 10-year growth rates of any capital city in Australia, sitting at just 1 to 2% per annum, so at some point Darwin's got to have its time in the sun. Now, if we go to the annual capital growth rates across Australia's capital cities, it's a very similar story to what we've been noticing in previous months over the course of this year, with Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide still being the top performing markets over the last 12 months in Australia. What's interesting to me personally is to still see Melbourne obviously sitting negative at this stage, which means a lot of people that aren't watching this sort of stuff are not considering this market because it's not running in value right now. Now, my expectation a year from now, if these rates do come down, is we'll see Melbourne well in the green and looking like one of Australia's top performing markets a year from today. Now, we've done a whole series of videos on this recently where we look at some of the top performing and the most undervalued suburbs in the likes of Brisbane and Melbourne. Those two markets at the moment are obviously my pick of the day based on history and potential performance. Now, in terms of the vacancy rates, now for the first time in a long time, in fact, for the first time since we started recording these market updates, every capital city in Australia has a vacancy rate sitting below 1.5%. with Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, Hobart, and Darwin all sitting below 1%, which means parts of those markets are chronically undersupplied right now. Now, this is obviously a no-brainer with the Australian Labor government bringing in over 500,000 people to Australia from overseas in the last 12 months, and the Australian Bureau of Statistics suggesting that we should see at least 500,000 people moving into Australia over the next 5 years alone. Now, the big winners of that population growth are going to be Sydney, Melbourne with over 160,000 people per year coming in, and Queensland getting over 100,000 of those people per year as well. For me, as a non-gambling man, but definitely an investor, I like to follow the population growth, the job growth, and the infrastructure growth in terms of the cities that I like to buy. Now, in terms of the auction clearance rates over the last month, obviously Melbourne and Perth are looking okay, but there's nothing from my perspective to write home about with this data at the moment. It's not extremely hot in any of these cities, but I would think that as these first home buyers grants come into the market and the rates go down over time, we should see confidence improve and more Australians looking to buy the more undervalued and affordable cities around Australia over the next 2 years. Now, one of my favourite things to look at each month is obviously ANZ's Roy Morgan report around Australian consumer confidence. Now, as Sam, my videographer, and I were just having a laugh off camera, as things start to go better, people seem in Australia to feel worse, which is absolutely hilarious because consumer confidence actually fell 5 points over the last month, which puts us at a level just above COVID and the last GFC. Now, for a country with a whole lot of beautiful stuff under the ground, a stable government, massive population growth, lowering interest rates and super cheap house prices outside of the likes of Sydney and East Melbourne, it is absolutely beyond my understanding as to why consumer confidence continues to come down. But I suppose as a business person and as an investor, I understand that when we go through a federal election, obviously consumer confidence generally goes down as we wait and see what happens. Now that we've got stability in terms of policy and government at the moment, and we've got the Labor government that seems set on letting over 400,000 people into the country per month, as well as an RBA that feels like they've got inflation under control recently, I think it kind of makes sense that people are feeling a little bit average. But I just want everyone to know you have not missed the boat. There is incredible opportunities in Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne, and Darwin in the coming years. And for those of you out there like me with a 10, 15, 20-year investment horizon ahead of you, it really isn't just about timing the market perfectly. It's about time in the market and realizing that it will go up, it will go down, it will be scary sometimes, it will be exciting sometimes. All of that's irrelevant as long as you are safe, you have a low risk position and you can hold longer term, then everything has worked out longer term in Australia, where according to Simon Presley, the average house price with Australian residential houses has grown by more than 8.2% per annum over the last 50 years. Now, the unemployment rate in Australia remained unchanged over the last month at 4%. Obviously, wages have gone up significantly over the last 5 years in Australia, and there's many more households now with 2 wages and more equity sitting against their property with the bank. Now, in terms of lending rates, we're sitting right in that long-term sweet spot of about 67% owner-occupiers and about 37% investors. I would assume that over the next 12 months, as more first home buyers come into the market, we might see the percentage of people that are owner-occupiers increase above the 70% mark, but this is just a constant seesaw. Now, interest rates at the time of this video remain relatively unchanged, but according to CBA, Westpac, ANZ, as well as NAB Bank, they're all expecting 3 rate cuts between now and the end of this year, resulting in the cash rate ending up at somewhere between 3.1 and 3.5%, depending on which bank you're looking at. Now, in terms of the total number of listings across Australia, which is effectively another indicator that you can look at to figure out supply and demand across the country versus historical timeframes, there are over 242,000 listings across Australia. Now, we're primarily buying here at Pumped On Property the Melbourne and the Brisbane marketplaces at the moment, and what we've seen over the last month is a chronic undersupply of quality listings coming onto the market. Now, in terms of the distressed listings, I'm sure you guys all remember all of the news articles and all of the media coverage a few years ago on the mortgage cliff in Australia and how all of these properties are going from really low fixed rates to higher variable rates. And when that happens, the Australian market is going to be flooded, the bubble is finally going to pop, and the entire industry is going to come crashing down. Now, one of the key indicators that I follow so that I don't buy into that hype and I can make an objective opinion is the percentage of distressed listings or the number of distressed listings across Australia. Now, over the last 12 months, despite interest rates going up, distressed listings are down 8.8%, which is so significant from this time last year. Now, one of the key questions that I'm getting asked online and offline all the time at the moment is, Ben, have I missed the boat, and are you personally buying property in 2025 yourself? Now, the answer to the first question for me in terms of the boat is obviously the rising tide does lift all boats, and you don't want to be the person when the water goes out that bought the wrong market or the speculative market at the wrong time for too much money. That said, I still personally see incredible value in the likes of Brisbane, Darwin, Melbourne, parts of Perth, and parts of Adelaide. Now, for me personally, I've got great exposure to Brisbane as we move towards the 2032 Olympic Games, but over the next 9 months or so, I plan on buying 2 investment properties in my self-managed super fund in either North Melbourne, West Melbourne, or the Mornington Peninsula, which I believe are the 3 most undervalued parts of the Melbourne city right now. Now, I don't often say this because I don't want to sound like every other dickhead in the Australian real estate industry, but things are starting to look pretty good in particular markets around Australia, and it is certainly not a time, because we are close to the top of the cycle and moving into the next downside of the global economic cycle. So it's definitely not a time to go rushing out, leveraging up to the hills, getting as many bullshit trusts set up as you possibly can, and buying as many properties as you can, like they talked about in The Big Short back in 2006 and 2007. That said, if you have a really strong financial position, 1 or 2 good incomes, some equity or some great savings in the bank, and you have a 10, 15 or 20-year time horizon, and you like to buy certain markets at the right time of their cycle, then 2025 and 2026 could look phenomenal for you for the likes of Brisbane and Melbourne as well. G'day guys, my name's Ben and I'm the director here at Pumped on Property, and I just want to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.